Hey guys, Darren Carr here, coach of Wise Ocean Pods, and welcome to the first video about the 2024 AFL Fantasy season. In today's episode, we will be reviewing the round 1 results, highlighting all the important players that I think you should consider trading into your side at some stage throughout the season. And I'll also be reviewing my own team and how it performed over the weekend, and just giving you some insights about what I'm thinking about and where I'll be going forth. So, without further ado, let's sort of get into how I performed over the weekend. So here we are on the AFL Fantasy website. So I scored the 2012 points. Overall, I don't think this is too bad to start off the season. Obviously ranked at the 24,000 mark, somewhere around there. So overall, I am pretty happy. I think this score's about par for the weekend. So obviously a few things I need to fix up in my team, but overall I'm pretty happy with how things are running at this point in time. To highlight a few players that I wasn't too happy with. So I'll just pick out a few players here and there. There's not too many to go through, but Yo was a little bit disappointing, but with a 70. But again, he was playing against Port, so I'm not too concerned with him at this stage, so I'll back him in. He hasn't lost any money for us, so not too worried there. Caulfield was probably the most disappointing one. He was the lowest score I had on field. Really looked quite poor in that game. Didn't get any of the chip mark ball that we sort of typically expect at the Bulldogs, so he is definitely one I'm looking at moving on if I can get to it. So, yeah, that's what I thought. Zach Reed was a bit unfortunate. Had the hamstring tightness, I think it was, at the end of the day. So, he was subbed out at half-time. So, bit interesting to see how the teams go for this week, whether he is named again, because it sounded like it was only tightness at the end of the day. It wasn't. They couldn't actually rule it as a hamstring injury, so keep an eye on the injury report that comes out, I believe, tomorrow, Tuesday. So yeah, keep an eye on that one. If he is named, bang, good. But if it's your only red dot, maybe consider moving him on. The only real options back there maybe is Dean, but also keep an eye on him on what we with his being named, because he didn't look great either, but he's scoring quite well in fantasy. I think 50, so could make you a bit of cash where most people might have a red dot. So just something to consider. Moving along, Bontempelli was a little bit disappointing for his first game. Was tracking really well until halftime. Had that third quarter where I think he only had very minimal points, so that was a little bit disappointing. But nothing to worry about there in terms of trading. I saw everything I needed to see. He played really well. Just had a quieter quarter against a tougher matchup in Melbourne, so expect him to bounce back this week and against an easier opponent. So no need to trade him out there, and yeah, no worries there. John Newcomb was probably one of the other major disappointments. Had a pretty big rap on this guy coming into the round 1 after his preseason. Looks like that main guy in the midfield for Hawthorn, especially with Will Day out, but just couldn't get around it on the weekend. Just looked really disinterested. Game sort of wasn't going his way. Gave away a few unfortunate free kicks, collecting people high, and just looked really disencouraged by everything, and really wasn't having much influence around the midfield group. So I expect him to bounce back. I'd say Sam Mitchell will get into him a fair bit to bounce back, and I do expect him to go back to his 90 and 100s, but his break even now is 122, so he's probably the one that will certainly be leaving my side this week and jumping on a few of the other cheaper options. So that's him. Everyone else in my full midfield was pretty good. Happy with all the rookies. Sanders was obviously a little bit disappointing with Bevo subbing him out at 3/4 time, I believe. He was on track for a good 90, so that would have been handy on field, but I think everyone had him on field, so I don't think it hurts too much at the end of the day. Sharp was really good, repaid the faith. for most coaches. Only the 28%, so here's one that most people probably trade into this week, and sort of gives me a bit of a leg up, I would say, that most people didn't have. So glad to see he's scoring, and definitely could find his way on field for me coming in the next rounds. Dry Clark, I want to talk about him as well. Was really poor in my opinion. It was really disappointing to see. Had a bit of a role change coming into the first round. Only got, I think, the 8 CBAs for the game, which was disappointing. So didn't really get around it too much. So could be on the chopping block as well if I needed to do a bit of a rookie fix up, as I think all the other rookies did quite well, obviously besides Reed. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. Rux, Gorn did really well, but Grundy will obviously be the talk of the town for this week. Obviously had the 53, had like 7 free kicks against, so realistically should have been closer to a 70, but you got to account for those. He even had 4 free kicks against last week against Gorn, so it's something to flag, I guess, but I don't know. I'm not considering moving him on at this stage. He made the coin. He's got a break even of 85, sorry. So definitely could give him another look. And he does have Tigers and West Coast coming up in the next after this game, after Essendon. Sorry. So something to definitely consider. I'm thinking I'm going to stick with it. He's obviously shown the ceiling against Gorn. I just think it was a poor game, and it was one of those things. So we'll just have to wait and see how he performs. In the forward line, was overall pretty happy with most people. I think the only one that was sort of a letdown was Zach Fisher. Sort of expected a bit more from him. He was actually tracking alright until half time. I think he was above 50 at that stage, close to Sheasel, and then sort of just dropped off in the third and fourth. So I don't know. I'm not too worried there. Still got a 77 break even. Definitely one to watch for this weekend, as Freo are typically more restrictive for defenders, so he could be due for another bad score this weekend. But back him in. I don't think there's too much concern there, and because it's a forward line, you can have those bad scores and it won't affect you too much. And an 68 really isn't that bad in the long run anyway. So back him in, I say. Played a bit of rookie roulette this weekend with who to field out of Lazaro, Reed, and Wilson, and I got that one right in the end with the Wilson on field. Just scored me the extra 8 or 10 points, something like that. So that was handy. He looked really good for the weekend, so I'd say he sticks in my side. And Harley Reid was actually on track to beat him in the first quarter. I think he had like 8 disposals or something like that in the first quarter, and then went really quiet just because he was against Port. So yeah, he could make his way back on field for me in the coming weeks for sure. But overall, pretty happy with the side. Not too much I need to fix up. Like if I switch over to this, really, all I'm really looking at is the green, right? So most of the people are going green. Yo, like I said, not too concerned. It was 1K. He hit his break even. Expect him to do a bit better this week against a not as tough matchup. Got a break even for 77, but one to watch. It's just, yeah, I'll get into it when I go through the teams, but yeah, West Coast just really didn't score much at all against Port, so I expect that to jump up, and he was the second highest scorer for that team. So Reed obviously had the injury, went down, so ideally I would like to move him on and make some more cash, but there's just really limited options there. Bontempelli, like I said, went down 22k, but I'm not selling. I'm not going to sell at any point, so doesn't hurt me too much. Ideally, like most people want to earn cash in the start of the season, but I'm more than happy to pay up and have that captain option in the coming rounds. Everyone else sort of went up money besides John Newcomb. Fisher, like I said, with Yo, back him in again. He only dropped that 1k. So I think there's a pretty clear option of who I want to trade out in terms of just John Newcomb. He's definitely one to go for me. It's just sort of linking up who I want, whether I want to do a rookie fix up and move on like a Jai Clark and get in like a Dempsey or something like that, or I can move on a Caulfield and get to a D'Ambrosio or something somewhat along those lines as well. So, and Jono will probably go to Bonner, but we'll get into that in the next episode where I review the trades. So, but yeah, that's all I really had from my side. Like I said, I think I'm in a pretty good position to shoot up pretty well. I don't think the rankings at this stage is too important. I think this year, more than ever, rankings don't mean a whole lot until the first 6 rounds are done, where we have the early buys. Obviously, a lot of round 1 teams will have, the people that have a lot of early buy players, like your Tom Greens, etc. So expect them to sort of drop down the list quite quickly in the coming rounds. So probably not this round, round 2, because we only really have Colton that's relevant, but definitely in 3, 5, and 6. So something to consider. Don't really worry about your ranking too much. I'd say anyone that's in the top sort of 50,000 or such would still be in the running to be a top 100, if not for the car as well. So definitely nothing to worry about there. But without further ado, I think we'll get into the games. So, oops, not that one. So I'm on the DFS website here, and I'm just going to go through the players. If you haven't checked out DFS before, like I've said many times, this is the go-to for fantasy scoring. Even Supercoach, if you play Supercoach, I don't personally, but something I may dabble in the future. But yeah, we'll just go through all the games, and you can see here, the blue means is a player I'm watching, and the yellow means a player that I currently own. So let's really get into it, I guess. So we'll start with Colton here, just going down the list from top to bottom with the highest score for the round. So Nick Newman is one definitely on my watch list. Now that Doherty is out with that ACL injury, he is definitely on my higher priority list, and I do think he'll be top 6, and I do think these scores will be quite common coming in for the rest of the season. So was that main distributor off halfback, had quite a few tackles, which was a bit interesting as well. Do expect a few more marks to come into it, but he looked really good off at halfback and expected to go again. No one else really looked. I'll say Mitch McGovern looked really good, being without Jacob Wiedering, but I don't think he's really fantasy relevant for us, unfortunately. He's priced at like $680 or something like that, so a bit expensive for me. Also, like I said before, all these guys have the round 2 buy, so definitely if you're looking to trade any of these guys in, you can definitely wait a week and get the points this week by trading in someone else and getting these guys next week. So just keep that in mind. Zach Williams got the 74, was really happy with what he did. He didn't look great to the eye. He just sort of got a lot of that chip mark around in the back line where he went sort of just on the 45, and then he'd either chip it back to them or he just went long down the line. So, but in the end of the day, we're only looking for scores. So I'm more than happy that he scored that. He went up a bit of cash, and yeah, that's really good. George Hewitt was probably a bit disappointing. I know a few people had him in his side, being without Sam Walsh and being that main midfield guy, but only scored the 69. So could someone that you move on, especially with the bye this week. Carroll was a sub in round 0 and came into the side in round 1 with Doherty going down. Scored the 64. I think he's priced at about 400k as a pure midfielder. It looked okay. Probably not someone I'm looking at going to right now, but definitely on my watch list if he can increase that scoring potential. But besides that, I think that was all I really had for Colton. Wasn't a hugely fantasy relevant game in terms of, scoring potential. I think most of the people only had Zach Williams. So we'll go to Richmond. So really all I wanted to touch on here was Jaden Short scored the 70. Really shared a lot of that ball with Daniel Rioli back there, who I can't even see him right now. Doesn't matter. Oh, there he is. Didn't get a whole lot of the ball either. So, like, obviously that preseason, like I caveated to, was Blostone coming back into the side. He obviously took a lot of the points and took most of the kick-ins as well. So, would I jump off of Short if I had him? Probably not. What is their run like? Let me have a quick look. So Tigers, Ooh, I have Port this week and then Swans next week. Ooh, that is a tough one. So, if you don't have anything else to do, then I'd consider jumping off. But at the end of the day, I don't think he's going to be too bad, and he should be about that top 6 if when he improves. So that's all I have to say about him. Didn't really have too many other relevant. Campbell was one I owned just because of that cash rise. Had that negative 38 break even. Scored the 48. I am a little worried that he may be dropped this week just because he was quite poor. And it was quite unfortunate the way when you watched him. It was like every time he sort of got the ball from a teammate, there was a free kick that happened just before and the ball got taken off of him and he didn't get a disposal or any of the points. So this could have easily been closer to a 60 without those free kicks, but that's just the way the game goes, unfortunately. But definitely keep an eye on him. He's definitely going to earn some cash for us in the coming weeks if he can stay in the team. I probably wouldn't trade him in. What is he priced at now? He is no, I take that back. If you don't have him and you're high on him, he's got that -1 break even. So definitely could grab him. It's probably one of the last weeks you can grab him. I'd say anything above like that 310k, you'd probably just give it a miss. So definitely could jump on him there. Besides that, Dow was really disappointing. He was sort of my watch list in preseason, but just hasn't shown any scoring potential. So that's all I really had for that game. Let's move on to the next one. I should start to get through this pretty quickly. All right, Collingwood. So Nick Dacos obviously did Nick Dacos things. Hurt the few of us that don't have him. Scored the 123. Was a good VC option if you went that way. Scored the 1 goal. Had the 37 disposals, which is everywhere. Yes, and definitely one you got to make plans for to get on at some stage. Obviously, it's been highly spoken about in the preseason how that is going to eventuate. Like I said, I think round 7 is the time to jump on, and hopefully he can limit the damage from here on out. Didn't cop any attention in this game, which is a bit surprising. I thought Rowbottom would have done a bit of job, but Rowbottom was also racking it up, so I can see why they didn't. Besides that, not too fantasy relevant here. Just McCreary came on in the 4th, had the 27 points, so he's going to be even cheaper when he does eventually come in to that midfield. If he can come in full time, say like a DeGoey goes down injured or a Mitchell goes down injured. So keep an eye on him, keep on your watch list as he might come in at some stage and be quite cheap. On to Sydney, who is very fantasy relevant. So Heaney absolutely killed it once again. Had 29 disposals, 7 marks, 4 tackles, and even kicked 2 goals too. So this score of 125 could have been even bigger if he kicked a little bit straighter, but you take it as you get it. Don't see him going anywhere anytime soon. He's got a pretty soft matchup with Tigers and West Coast coming up in round 3 and 4. So, but in terms of would I jump on, I think you've probably missed the boat at this point. He's 808k. You're only going to have him for another 3 games before his bye, and then you're going to have the couple players come back from injury. So it's a tricky one for sure because he has the break even of 51. So he's not going to make a bulk of cash again this week. He would have to score a 120 again to go up for another 50k, but it's definitely on the cards. Do have a tougher matchup this week. Oh, no, I take that back. He has Essendon this week, so it's a tough one. If I didn't have him, I probably wouldn't be trading into him and just sort of taking on the chin. I would have started with him, so, but I've got him luckily. Moving on, Chad Warner, probably one I should have put on my watch list. He did score the 112 and has been looking good preseason. He is the main midfielder in that side currently, so kicked 3 goals, which was surprising. I didn't really notice that, but yeah, definitely one to watch if he can have another breakout year. Errol Gordon returned the faith of those coaches that started him. I don't actually look at the numbers of who started him. Errol Gordon, he's up to 13%. So he did drop down a lot after that round 0 score. So, but for those that started him, did repay the faith and scored the 111. Didn't drop too much in cash. Oh, well, sorry, he dropped 54k. So But at the end of the day, you're not going to be trading him out. He should be a keeper for the season, and we all know what he can do. So expect him to go big again. James Jordan did really well. Was a little bit concerned, I think, at half time. I don't think he was tracking too well. I think he just did the usual where he had a quiet quarter and really jumped up later on and got to his 78. So really happy with that in the forward line. That's where I sort of expect him to go, sort of 70 to 80. So really happy with that. Roberts is probably the next one. Obviously, absolutely killed it. Was a little bit concerned, like Jordan. He was only on like 24 points at the half. And obviously, I had him on field, so I was a little bit concerned because he obviously scored the 91 in round 0. But jumped up and scored quite well for us, and I was happy to take the 68 on field, especially with his price, his cash coming in. So, and he went up 110k, I think. Yeah, which is absolutely massive for those people that didn't have him. He's only 40% owned, which is kind of crazy. Alright, so let's ignore the in the background. Moving on to the next one, Grundy. Obviously, I spoke about him a little bit before. Grundy only scored the 53. How can I really put this? He didn't do well. I'll say that. Against Collingwood, he came up against the two ruckmen of Cameron and Cox. He was on the bench a lot of time. He only played the 71% time on ground, which was really disappointing to see. I don't know what that was about. Maybe it was just the strategy with playing against the two ruckmen. Seemed to always play like the first 6 or 7 minutes of the quarter and then went to the bench for 4 or 5 minutes before coming back on. But did that multiple times, and I think he even went on the bench twice in a quarter. So, which was really disappointing to see. And I do expect him to bounce back next week. I only took the 1 mark for the game, and he was just finding himself in really silly spots where he wasn't getting any of the chip mark or being that target down the line. So, yeah, expect him to improve again. Who has he got next week? He's got Essendon, so he's got Goldstein. It'll be an interesting matchup because I think Goldstein has typically been quite restrictive. He did restrict Reeves this weekend to only a 51, but that's not uncommon for Reeves. So we'll definitely see. I'm repaying the faith, and I'm going to be backing him in my opinion, to be a keeper. Well, not a keeper for the season, but at least until the later buys, for sure. But that's all I had for that game. Let's get on to game 3. Already been going for 22 minutes here, so I want to try and get through the rest of the games in the next 18 minutes. Make this a 40-minute video. Alright, so first one, Archie Perkins absolutely brained it for this game. As a forward, I think he's... let me just look it up here for you. Perkins is priced at 654k. Got the break even of 34. Do I see him repeating that again? Probably not, especially with Parrish on the sidelines at the moment, who is expected to come back in, if not this week, the week after, with a hamstring. But surprisingly, he was the main CBA taker at on this game. So it sort of went Perkins, Merritt, then Setterfield, and then a few others here and there. I think it was actually Dersma. That was a 4th midfielder. So what happens when Parrish comes in? Who gets pushed out? I'd say it'd be Perkins that goes back out. But at the end of the day, it could have forced their hands to keep him in, and maybe a Setterfield goes out. Definitely don't see a Merritt moving out of there at any stage. We know how good he is. Good segue into Merritt. We'll talk about him. 31 disposals, got 8 marks, took the 5 tackles. Was really happy with his performance at the end of the day, paying up for him. Was only 6% owned, so I was really pleased with that. Yeah, don't really need to say too much else. He did merit things. He got a lot more chip mark around, which was very pleasing to see. Probably didn't do as well in the contested ball as I would have thought. Just with Perkins sort of racking it up a lot and didn't get many tackles, but expect that to sort of fluctuate each week where he can get, 8 to 10 tackles here and there. So we will see on that one. Next one was Nick Martin. Really looked great in the first half. Had the quieter quarter in the third, which is why he didn't crack the ton. Only the 93. Definitely one that I know most people have, and definitely wouldn't be moving him on at any time. I know he didn't only just beat his break even, but expect him to improve over the season and be a bit more consistent. I think he got a little bit scared when Finn McGuinness was warming up. That's all it was. Next one would just be Elijah Sartis, as I've been told it is now, not Cheetahs. Sartis. So was a sub, surprisingly. So I did not expect that coming into the season. He was in consideration for my side, as I showed in my team reveal, but definitely would have been moved out quite quickly for those that did want to start him and did have him in his side. I think it would have been an easy swap to Nat Fife, who ended up doing okay anyways. And Zach Reed, we spoke about him, was only scored the 17 to the half, so it wasn't on a blinder anyway, and would have only probably scored the 30 to 40, so not too much to worry about there. But yeah, hopefully he can get up for the next game and can score us some points. But well, we'll have to wait for the injury report. Moving on to Hawthorn, Massimo D'Ambrosio scored the 94 and is probably one that you could look at bringing into your side if you want to move on, say, a Caulfield or another failed Buderick or something like that, as he is priced around that 500k mark, I believe. Let's go Massimo. Yeah, 498k. Got a break even of 29. Congratulations to the 2.3% that started him. It's a great pick. Reminds me of the Jaden Hunt pick that I started last year. Could definitely work out for you in your favour. Definitely one you can jump on if you think he's going to back it up. Definitely in my considerations at this time. Moving on, let's go to Carl Amon. Only scored the 80, and a lot of that was late, to be honest. It was going quite terribly to the half or even three-quarter time. It's a tough one because it is below sort of his price tag. Let's have a quick look. I'll bring it up. Sorry for all the jumping back and forth. I think it's just a good way to show you what I'm looking at. So only scored the 80, has now a 99 break even, dropped the 6k. Do I expect him to do that again? Not really. I'd say it'd be one you could back in. Looking at Hawthorn's run, though, it is a bit tougher. They've got Melbourne coming up this weekend, which you'd sort of expect the ball to be in their back half a little bit more. So that could mean a bit more ball for him and a lot more kick-ins, which is probably something I should have said in this game. Essendon didn't look like missing. I think they scored 17-4 at the end of the day, and so there was very minimal kick-ins. So Carl Amon couldn't get those cheap, easy three kicks, or the 3 points for the kick out, or the +6 for the being the receiver sort of thing. So definitely expect that to be only a floor score for him in terms of that. Did also kick the one goal, so maybe it's a bit inflated as well. So yeah, expect him to improve, I would say. Next one I'll probably talk about is just Jai Newcomb. Obviously had him in my side, was highly disappointing, scored 62 points. I said it off the top, he didn't look interested. Still had the 21 disposals, which was interesting. Got a few marks. Really only had one tackle, which is really disappointing. Had the 3 kicks against, and yeah, looked really poor. Still was the main guy in there, but I think with his price tag now, you got to move off. He would have to have a big game this week to really make it worth it, which I can see at the end of the day. It's going to be a lot more contested against Melbourne, but I think he's really the only one I can move on to benefit my side, so that's what I plan to do. Cam McKenzie was the only other one that I sort of had on my watch list, just with a few other people starting him. Scored the 41, really was disappointing. I don't think the role was too different, just really didn't get amongst it. And yeah, it was quite poor, and if you started him, I'd say you'd have to move off pretty quickly and sort of get to those other guys in Fife and Jordan and a few others that have popped up in that forward line. So that's enough about that game. God damn, I took that way too long for that one game. Alright, GWS, so Tom Green absolutely brained it. Obviously a lot of people have started him with an easy matchup, scored 145, kicked the 1 goal. Absolutely was a good captain option. Congratulations to everyone that did that. Moving on was Lockie Whitfield. looked really good as well. He was probably on track for 110 to 120. Just had a quieter fourth quarter. Only had like I think 9 points or something like that. Was really quiet in the back end. I think that was just due to didn't really chip it around as such. So he expect him to improve, and you take 100 every day of the week. So and he really improved in price. So got to take that. Cadman also did really well. Scored the 56. I think kicked the 2 goals, 1 against an easy matchup. So I think he's got a negative. Let's bring it up. Cadman is got a negative. A 3 break even. So he expect him to jump up in cash again this week against West Coast. Hopefully he can kick 2 or 3 again. So if you got on him, great. If you don't have him, then maybe look at jumping on him. I do think there's better options, but he's definitely one that you could consider. That's all I really had for GWS. On to North Melbourne. Obviously, lots of guys here to discuss. Cherry, first of all, absolutely killed it. Scored the 121, which a lot of it came in the second half, to be honest. He was sort of tracking a little bit lower in the first half. Got the 18 disposals, got 19 hitouts. He didn't give away any free kicks, which was really surprised me, to be honest. I thought, obviously, a lot of ruckmen are giving away free kicks at this stage, and he just didn't do that at all. So, it's something to consider, but he absolutely killed it. I definitely could support people jumping on if you have lost faith in a Grundy, but personally, I am backing Grundy at this stage. Sheasel absolutely killed it. Didn't have any midfield time, which was a little bit interesting. I thought he would have a little bit more, but didn't have a single CBA. So definitely shows that he doesn't mind whether he's getting midfield time or not. He can rack it up back there. So expect a bit more of that. LDU repaid the faith for people that stuck around. Scored the 98. Didn't hurt coaches that didn't have him, but definitely repaid the faith and expect to probably improve a little bit more. Just needs to get more of that transition, but only had the 1 mark, so expect a bit more of that I would like to see. McKercher absolutely killed it as a first-year player. 94, you can't ask for more than that from a rookie, realistically, especially, and you should definitely be fielding him every week, I'd say. Fisher was, like I said, in my team performance, he was a little bit disappointing, but I wouldn't be trading him out as such. He's not going to lose a bunch of cash, and was tracking really well until the second half where he just dropped off. Similar with George Wardlaw, he was equaling it with the best in the first half, and it's really just that time on ground which is really a concern. I thought that would jump up to closer to 180 this season, but just hasn't got there yet. Still working into his fitness. So had a really poor second half, and I think only scored maybe like 15 points total in the second half. So something to watch. Wouldn't be jumping off. Give him another week, I'd say. He's not going to burn you too much. Looking at who they have Freo, who is a pretty neutral team for midfielders, so expect him to do okay. Desmond was the next one. Just wanted to see how he goes as a rookie. He scored the 52, but he kicked the 2 goals, so not really in my considerations at this time with his higher price tag. So, and Lazaro also scored the 52. He's on my side, very similar to Desmond, but didn't get the goal, so I expect him to sort of do a bit better. I don't think he had any CBAs for this game, but yeah, he's definitely locked in that side, and I do see him improving against an easier matchup, hopefully. So we'll wait and see on that one. That's enough about those two. So quickly, Geelong. So there's a few people I'm interested in here. Max Holmes, I've obviously been quite public that I was quite keen on him in the preseason, and I do wish I kind of started him now, scoring the 99. He lit it up in the first quarter. I think he had like 4 or 5 marks and was just everywhere. He's definitely got that halfback role, and definitely gets a lot of handball receives and even chip kicks when they're switching in transition. So, and it looks like that's what Geelong are going to do. So definitely one I could considering jumping on this week if there's no other options, or if there's other priority options. But yeah, definitely my considerations. If not, if it'll be next week sort of thing. Oliver Dempsey, the rookie pick of the week to start off, scored the 92, kicked the 3 goals, 1. Don't expect that every week. Obviously, that's not sustainable, but had the 15 disposal, which was really nice. Seven marks, and really worked hard. I think he got back quite a bit in spread, so he's gonna get a lot of that transition ball, and it's definitely one that you probably need to grab hold of now because I think he's Dempsey priced at 300k. Yeah, got the negative take 10 break even. Is definitely one that we're gonna have to jump on. I think if you don't have bigger issues, and you can't do a rookie fix up, then maybe you can give him a miss. But if you can, then I'd definitely consider it. Tom Stewart scored the 85, and I think that's just what he's going to do now, unfortunately. I was quite hard on him in the preseason, but now that Max Holmes has gone back there and taking a lot of that chip ball, I do expect him to slide a little bit and be a bit more accountable, so that's just my thoughts there. Definitely, probably wouldn't move. It's a tricky one, very tricky. Yeah, I'd say move him on if you can, but definitely wouldn't be up there, especially with their run coming up. I've spoken that a fair few times. Got a lot of easy games coming up. Sorry about the dog barking in the back. Jai Clark is the only one I also really want to talk about. Well, scored the 32, which was really disappointing, and only played the 59% time of ground. Just trying to look at that. It's definitely one you could trade out if you needed to. And Sam Manangola was the other one as well, who came on as a sub, scored the 23 points. Sorry for the interruption, guys. Hopefully that wasn't too loud for you guys. I don't know how long it was going on for, so it just blends out in my mind. But moving on to Jack Steele. St Kilda. But speaking of the Steele, we'll talk about him. He looked really good. Scored the 108. Really got around the ground and got a lot of marks, which was surprising. So definitely a good pick if you started with him. I don't know if that's going to be sustainable. Like I said in the preseason, whether he's going to always have that chip around him. But he even got back in the D50 and got a few marks back there. So, which was pleasing to see and really repaid the faith to the people that started him. So, definitely a good pick and someone we should maybe consider getting in at some stage. Bonner is going to be the talk of the town this week. Scored the 102, had the 28 disposals, 5 marks. So. And had the 93% time on ground, which was really, really impressive. So, definitely high on the radar for most people. I think he's now forced their hand to start him. I wasn't super keen on it at the start of the season just because I know Sinclair is set to return. But looking at some of the results from the weekend, St Kilda crying out for a third midfielder. It was sort of like Jack Steele, Brad Crouch, and then there was no one else that sort of took the main CVA. So expect him to sort of come back and decide and slot straight into the midfield, I'd say. So have to wait and see. But I think in terms of Bonner, I think he's forced a hand at this point and he's going to make a lot of cash. So look to jump on if you can. Wanganeen Malira, I know a fair few people started him. I don't know why he's not on my watch list here, but scored that 84, which was a little bit disappointing, but I think it's still above his price tag at the end of the day. Malira. Oh no, he dropped the 6k, so he has to do a little bit more this week to improve. But yeah, I wouldn't be too concerned there. Saints do have a pretty good matchup, and that was a hard matchup for them in terms of playing the Cats, so they got the Pies this week, so definitely something I wouldn't be too worried about there. And the last one for Saints is just Darcy Wilson. Played really well, scored 2 goals, so don't expect the 63 to be sustainable, but he definitely showed that he can get around the marks a lot more. Moving on to the next game, Gold Coast Suns. It wants to load. So this game is really hard to sort of take anything into consideration, considering how wet this game was. It was very shocking. I did watch this game live, and it was absolutely atrocious. So, but we'll go through them anyway. Flanders showed why he can be the top scorer for our forward lines, and is definitely someone we need to consider post his bye. Scored the 119, which is absolutely great. Which had the 35 disposals, but only had the 4 marks, 4 tackles. So, which was a good scoreline in my opinion. Didn't score any goals, didn't do anything else. So, definitely one we can consider. Miller was also high on my watch list. Scored the flat ton. Looked really good. Had the 9 tackles, which again probably isn't sustainable, but it was just the way this game went with how wet it was. So have to wait and see. But again, another one I want to consider getting in at some stage. Next one would just be sort of Sexton. I did say this before, but scored the 67. Was really happy with that. Even though it was a wet game, got quite a few marks in the back line and was close to Power, sort of the second fiddle to Power. And we all know how Buderick went and only scored 25. So if you had Buderick, would I be trading? It's a tough one because let's bring him up actually. Buderick went up in cash, which was surprising. Now has a 71 break even, which is definitely achievable. He's got the Dogs next week, so he could definitely improve and definitely expect him to improve. But if he's your only one to jump off, then I'd be considering it for sure. You don't really want anyone on your side that can drop a 30, that's for sure, or below 30. Moving on to Crows. Now, I don't have anyone on my watch list at the Crows at the moment. Just the way I see it, so much unknown with how their midfield is structuring up with the likes of Laird, Crouch, Dawson, and Sam Berry as being the main midfielders, and you've also got Rankin in there quite often as well. So it's just really hard to sort of tell. But Laird did what he normally does during wet games and absolutely tackled anything that walked. So he got the 10 tackles and scored quite well. Matt Crouch only had the 73% time on ground, but scored quite well again at 113. I think this game just really suited to him, just getting those quick, easy disposals out of the stoppage and moving on from there. Didn't really do a whole lot else in terms of marks. Did get a few tackles just because of how wet it was, but he's not usually a huge tackler in my opinion. Dawson was a little bit disappointing with an 89. Don't really know how to really justify why he was that low. He did have the 4 free kicks against. Just expected him to generally improve. I didn't actually look at the CBAs for this game, but I'd say it's pretty similar with these 3 being the main guys and Berry being on the outer. So I don't know whether Berry stays with that side, and definitely something to watch. So, but besides that, wasn't really too interested in anyone in this side. Burgess, not someone I'm considering as a rookie option, especially because he's only in there because of Tex being out, which Tex should be back pretty shortly, I'd say. Moving on to the next game. So, a bit more fantasy relevant, this one. So, we'll go with the Melbourne first. So, I'll touch on Billings, even though he's not really on my watch list at this point in time. Absolutely killed it this game, 140. Definitely don't expect him to be the sub anymore. Got 15 marks, which is absolutely unreal. Don't expect that every week. But he did play a really good role on the wing and sort of a half forward, giving them plenty of ways out. So, yeah, definitely one to consider getting into your side eventually. I don't think he's forced a hand this week just because he did have that high break even of 140 something last week, but now he's got a break even of 31. Who do they have? They have Crows next, but then they go Port and then Crows. Sorry, did I say? I think I said Crows. It goes Hawks, Port, Crows. So, someone we could jump on at a later stage, but not really in my consideration, especially with that early buy. It's enough to keep me away at this point in time. Petrarca did what he usually does, played a lot forward, played a lot in midfield, got 10 marks, which was surprising, got the 1 goal, scored the 121, so nothing too surprising there. Oliver is definitely on my watch list as he becomes a bit more in favour at the Demons, if he can break in and, be loved again. So it's had the 35 touches and was absolutely everywhere. Only had the 71% time on ground, so they're definitely managing him as such. So I like to see that jump up before I look at jumping on post his buy. I would say, just looking at their run, I've identified like around 10 is sort of when you want to jump on. They come against West Coast, so that's something I may jump on at some stage. Salem scored the 88, so did better than what his price stat at the 70, I thought it was. And really did well. So, yeah, definitely a good pick to start with. That was a good one for most people. I had the 20 disposals, 5 marks, 5 tackles. I was still in the CBAs, which is good to see. So, great pick. I probably wouldn't jump on if you didn't start with him, but yeah, that's about all I've got to say. On to Howe, scored the 66. Looked really confident again, but yeah. If you don't have him, you definitely need to get him. He's got a very low break even of -14. I think he has the most break even of any rookie so far. So, but I think most people have him. He's 58% owned. So if you don't have him, get on him. If not, he's probably even a fieldable option at this stage if you want to field him over a Caulfield or something like that. But we've got best 18 this week, so but I'll get into that after. And then our last one was Caleb Windsor. Scored the 58. Did get subbed out in the end, so he was probably on track for close to a 70. Did a lot better than I expected because I didn't start him, fading him a bit. But, good pickup for those that started him. Expect him to make a bit of cash going forward. On to the Bulldogs. Don't really need to talk about English. We just did what he normally does. We've definitely got to consider getting him in at some stage this year, I would say. Bontempelli, like I said, was pretty disappointing. Had 25 disposals, 5 marks, 5 tackles, kicked the 1 goal. Expect him to improve and bounce back. So, moving on. Not really anyone fantasy relevant. Maybe Bramble. He does look pretty good in the what's the colours? Blue, red, and white. So, I'm not sure what he's priced at. Maybe I'll have a quick look at that. Bramble priced at 574k or 77k. It's an interesting one. He looks good in this color, and he does quite well there, taking some kick-ins as well. So definitely could improve on his price tag for sure. But we'll move on to Riley Sanders. Like I said, got subbed out in 3/4 time, was on track for 90. So not going anywhere, not too concerned, but something to consider if you're tossing up between him and a few others to field, with Bevo being the coach. So last one I'll talk about is this Nick Caulfield. Obviously played pretty poor. Had pretty low time on ground, 74. Didn't have many top marks, didn't have any tackles. It was pretty piss poor for me, and definitely one I'd be looking at moving on. If not this week, then next week for sure. But we'll move on to the next game. Last two, so Port Adelaide. Connor Rosie absolutely tore it up and was definitely best on ground for me. Scored the 2 goals, had the 27 touches, 10 marks. Didn't have any tackles, which was pretty disappointing, but I guess that's sort of his role. He lets the balls in the midfield do the tackling. Was really classy, and everyone sort of looked for him. Every time there was a little chip mark on offer, they gave it to him. So similar with Butters being the vice captain, I've obviously got him on my side and was pretty pleased about what he did. 8 marks and 2 tackles. Kicked the goal as well. Was a little bit concerned when I kept seeing him start off the half forward, but at the end of the day, he did have, I think, the second most CBAs behind, what's his name? Jason Horne-Francis, not James. Who also probably should be mentioned here, scored the 87, and is definitely one that may be taking that leap this year. If you're keen, I think there's better options, unfortunately, especially in the midfield only. So I'm not touching him at this time. Ollie Wines was a bit disappointing. I had the 74% time on ground and was 4th in CBAs again. After all preseason, them telling us he's going to be that main midfield guy again. That's really disappointing to see. Who do they have this week? Port Adelaide have, I can't see it, Tigers. So if you aren't too concerned. You could definitely give it another week. Tigers are definitely going to be an easier matchup this year, so it could score quite well. But if you don't have any other things to move on, then it could definitely be one to do. Moving on to the West Coast Eagles. Only couple here that I wanted to mention. Elliot Yeo, like I said in the team performance, scored the 70. Had the 6 tackles, didn't really get much marks, which was a little bit disappointing, but West Coast couldn't get their hands on the ball. They scored so poorly, like only 1100 for the game, which is much lower than majority of the other teams. So I think on average it's like 1400. So that's nearly 250 points extra that they should be sharing around their team. So definitely expect most of these guys to improve, and Elliot Yeo to be one of the main beneficiaries, being the main CBA guy there. So that's all I wanted to say about him. And Harley Reid was the only other one I want to talk about. Absolutely killed it in the first quarter and went a bit quiet in the rest of the game. But I think they're managing his time a little bit with 72%. So something to consider when you're wanting to field him. But I think his job security is rock solid. And for those that didn't start him, do you need to probably get him in? Probably not. He didn't go up a huge amount of cash. What's his break even? 22. So it definitely could leave it another week if you didn't start him. But 83% of the competition have him, which is just ridiculous. Ridiculous numbers. I've never seen numbers that high. I think a lot of auto teams jumped on later on. So yeah, for the small population that didn't start him, if you didn't start him, then definitely don't need to jump on him at the stage, but I wouldn't be moving him on at any stage anytime soon. On to the next game. And the final game. We'll talk about Freo first. Sarong absolutely brained it and killed everyone that didn't start him. Scored the 161 and was by far the best player of the round. I think he was like 15 points clear of the next best. I think it was Tom Green. 46 disposals is absolutely ridiculous and didn't come any attention throughout this entire game, which is unreal. Was one on in the preseason I wasn't too hot on, just with the inclusions of the Nat Fyfe and Hayden Young going in there. I didn't know what the midfield rotation was going to look like, but it's pretty obvious that Brayshaw has been pushed out, and it's going to be Sarong, Young, and Fyfe as the main guys. So, do I see him continuing? I can actually see it being that main distributor in that side. A lot of teammates were looking for him. He got a lot of marks and even got quite a few tackles, which was interesting. So his thirst for the ball was like no other, and it's some like Errol Gordon we saw last year. So make your plans to get him in your side at some stage. I don't have any plans at this current stage, with a bit of harder matchups coming up. I know he has North coming up next week, but then he goes Crows, Carlton, and Port, which are harder matchups. But after that, round 6, he goes up against West Coast, and I reckon I could jump on at that stage if I can find the cash. And hopefully he's not too expensive. Brayshaw was the next one. I'm probably more fantasy relevant. Even Luke Ryan at the same time. He scored the 125 and absolutely killed it. 33 disposals, 10 marks. That's just his stat line. He's always going to have around those high 20s to 30 Dutchers and high marks, close to 10 every week. He's just that guy off halfback. Brayshaw, even though he was pushed out onto the wing a fair bit, he still got a lot of the ball around the grounds. Came in late once Hayden Young went back into the back line with a few injuries, so I think his CBAs are a little bit inflated from that. But yeah, if you started him, then you're happy to see this score with the concerns going into the season. Jordan Clark has been a bit on the higher radar for most people. Scored the 97. He looked really good. Sort of being that second fiddle to Luke Ryan. So do expect him to score well again. I think, who are they coming up against? I did just say this. They're coming up against North Melbourne, who are an easy team to score against for defenders. So he could go quite well this week. Luke Jackson, another one that was a bit more highly owned coming into this round, scored the 96. You'd be pretty happy with that. Did score the 2 goals, so don't expect that every week. But yeah, you'd be pretty happy for him to start pick up that score. Hayden Young, don't really need to talk too much about him. Did what he needed to do. 10 tackles, which was really pleasing. Just needed to get more disposals, and was on track until 3/4 time when he had to be switched back and only had, I think, 7 points in the last quarter, which was really disappointing. So no concern there, and expect him to go 100 plus coming up. In terms of his role, I do expect Freo to sort of bring in a defender so he can go back into the midfield. He's been training as a midfielder the entire preseason. I don't expect them to change that up just because of one injury. So Nat 5 absolutely was a god pick as well. Scored the 86. If you didn't start him, definitely look at jumping on. He's going to jump up in price quite quickly. Maybe not the highest priority in terms of the picks you need to get on, but definitely one you should consider because he looked really good and did what I thought he would do, and got more tackles and got a few more marks than what he showed in the preseason. So that's sort of what I expect every week, and maybe, yeah, if he can score 70 to 80, then I'm more than happy with that. Last one was just Jeremy Sharp. Looked really good off that half of the wing. Scored the 79 and was a really good rookie pick for us. So really happy with that, and someone you might need to jump on if you don't have him. Last, guys, was the Brisbane Lions. Only really one that I wanted to touch on in who's on my watch list is Josh Dunkley. Obviously, without Neil, he was the main midfielder there and absolutely racked it up without being a star, I thought. Had the 26 totals, 9 marks, 8 tackles, but really went under the radar when I was looking at this game. So, but yeah, that's all I really had for those guys. But yeah, that's all I really had for the games. Hopefully that gives a bit of insight on who I was looking at and what I think going forward. In terms of what I'm looking for going forward, like I said, I don't think there's too much I need to fix up in my team. Just probably one major guy, and whether I need to fix up a Reed or do a Clark or even a Caulfield, it's just something like that. But this is how we're structuring up for round 2, with obviously having Zach Williams on the bench. But yeah, that's all I really had for today's video. Hopefully it wasn't too long. I tried to keep this as short as possible, but trying to go through 9 games, it takes a little bit of time. But yeah, hope you liked. Please leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you later in the week for the round 2 preview. Take it easy.